Hi, everybody. It's Suzanne Potts with Athletes for Hope. I'm super excited to be here today. I have been with Athletes for Hope for the past 8 years, but I work predominantly athlete university space. I also am a social worker and teach at the University of Texas here in Austin, Texas. And I'm thrilled to be part of the whole Being Athlete program there. We've been combining athletes' passion for mental health and advocacy with athletes all across the globe. And so I'm excited to have you guys here today to talk with us. I thought we could just do some quick introductions so that everyone watching can see who you are. So Alex, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and we'll get started?
Sure. My name is Alex Sachs. I was with the Brazilian national team, soccer team, for about 11 years. I was lucky enough to be part of the 2004 Olympic Games. And we lost to the U.S. I'm not bitter. So I'm a silver medalist. And basically, I retired in 2007 at the Pan American Games. We did beat the U.S. in that one, so we did get the gold.
There you go.
Today, I actually work for the Scottsdale Police Department and their crime prevention unit, where it's kind of a community engagement with our citizens in Scottsdale.
Excellent. Yeah, I want to come back to that later and learn a little bit about your job. Why don't we turn to Daniel and have him introduce himself? Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. And I'm Daniel Alexander. I've come from Austin, Texas. So I grew up there as well. So we have a connection there. And I currently live in Phoenix, Arizona with my wife. We have 2 baby girls. And I've played professional basketball for 5 years. I played at Texas A&M. And then I transferred to Grand Canyon University here in Phoenix. And then played with the Suns G League team. Played with the Austin Spurs G League team, so the San Antonio Spurs and the Phoenix Suns affiliate teams, kind of like the minor league for the NBA, and then played overseas in Australia, and then in Sweden most recently, obliterated my knee for the most part, and have been on the recovery journey these past few years, and was set to go back and play, signed to go play for a team in New Zealand, and then COVID took place and limited some opportunities there. So now I just play FIBA 3-on-3 basketball, which is basketball, but it's also very different. So I play on a team and kind of just play on the weekends and at some FIBA events. And beyond that, I'm passionate about the holistic health of young athletes. And my hope is to be the kind of person that a younger me would have, enjoyed to have as either just a listening ear or to be able to share some insights. So that's, I'm really excited to be here. So I'm thankful to be on this panel to learn from Alex and Jim and yourself, Suzanne, and then maybe share an experience or two.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it sounds like you have a lot of experience in this space. So I'm really glad to have you joining us. And it's really nice to meet you. Jim, I'd love to have you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do and who you are.
I think you've been following me around because what a coinky dink. I've spent time in New Zealand, Australia, and with Scottsdale Police Department. Some form or another.
Now we're talking.
Yeah. And we won't go into too many details because we don't know what audience rating we'll be getting. But I'm with the Arizona State Office of National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we have 10 affiliates across the state and about 1,000 members. Been with them for almost 11 years. I am married, and I have been married just almost 22 years, and I have a daughter that turns 21 in November, believe it or not. Wow. So far we've done good. We have created an adult person.
That's amazing. That's a whole project in and of itself. Congratulations. Well, I'm so thrilled to have you all here. Obviously, you're all Arizona focused. So that was the purpose of this conversation, is to share this with folks in Arizona, athletes in Arizona, schools, whomever is looking for information about just, athletes, advocates. Go ahead, Jim.
And if I can just quickly, thank you, Daniel, for the beard memo.
Yes, thank you for that.
You got it.
I got it. But yeah.
You shaved just before this, Suzanne.
Just before. Off of this. Thank you for that. Well, again, we want to make sure we're providing just ideas and information. You all are such tremendous leaders in Arizona and your own right. And just thought we'd put some questions out there to some incredible athletes that we know and advocates. So I guess my first thought in all of this is like, why does it matter? Why does talking about mental health matter to you? What is the sense of importance in this space? And I'll give that to Jim first.
I thought you would always start with the person with the gun, I say.
Oh, well, Alex went first last time, so I want to hear from you.
Okay, fine. So what's the question?
So the
Why
question,
mental health?
yeah, why does mental health matter to you? You've been doing
I grew up my whole life thinking, geez, I sure would like to work in behavioral health. Not. I did 8 years in the Air Force, 8 years with Toys R Us. I managed a nightclub for a year. I owned a small Jamaican restaurant for a year. And now for almost 25 years, I've seen Arizona behavioral health from just about every conceivable angle. But it wasn't my plan and it wasn't intentional. So how about that?
Okay, great. So you've had some
Lived
experience.
experience, you might call it.
I was going to say varied experience.
There you go. I have a very eclectic background.
I love it. You're perfect for this then. What about you, Daniel? Why does mental health matter to you? I know you've had an injury you talked about. Tell us about why this matters to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that mental health in general, it's a big, concept, and there's a lot to it. But of the many ways you could describe it, in my experience, at times it can be the mental barrier that keeps you from being who you want to be and accomplishing what you want to accomplish. And a lot of younger athletes, I believe in particular, just because that's the space I'm speaking from, but young, guys and gals in general, I think struggle to recognize that mental health, the state of your mental well-being, can actually be your superpower or it can be your greatest limiter. And a lot of people aren't aware of either of those things. I know that I wasn't. And the only other thing that I'll say, just regarding why I'm passionate about it, or why I think it's important, is a lot of people, especially at the higher levels you go to, recognize that the game is a mental game, basketball, but soccer and across the board, there's so much to it in the mind. And when you ask across the board how much time athletes spend on the physical aspects of the game, it's 95+%, whether you're in practice, taking care of your body, nutrition and sleep and all these things that are interconnected and very important. But a lot of times very limited resources and time are spent towards the actual mental state of young athletes. And even though we recognize it's a big component of it, even a 50%, maybe it's still not getting the amount of emphasis and focus. And I think that that's limiting people without even realizing it. So that's one of the reasons why I'm, passionate about it. I think it's important.
Yeah, that is so true. I appreciate you bringing that up. Just the sliver of space that's dedicated to people addressing their mental health. And the data we've seen, in the research space is, 35% of at least elite athletes struggle or are talking about. I would actually counter that's probably a bigger number than we actually know. So
Right.
A lot of people struggling and such a small amount of resources geared toward it. What about you, Alex? Why does this matter to you?
Well, my background, I went to college. I have an undergrad in physical education, but I went into physical education because I was passionate about sports psychology. So I was blessed to go and do my master's degree and have my master advisor be one of the top sports psychologists in Brazil, Regina Brandão. And mental health has always been a factor in Brazil. You're talking about soccer is basically a sport in the favelas. So you're getting kids from really lower to lower class coming and having to deal with the pressure of feeding their families because they're now going to soccer school to become professional athletes, to be able to feed their families, to get out of poverty. So when I see mental health, I see mental health as so important because there's so much pressure put on, especially Brazilian athletes. But nowadays, I realize the pressure that's put on kids to become professional athletes or to get college scholarships here in the U.S., it does affect them mentally. You can see a number of athletes that have committed suicide throughout this year. And those are all the mental issues. So I always talk to people that it doesn't matter if your kid is like this best, but they need to really focus on, are they healthy mentally? Are they prepared? Are they given the tools to succeed? Because it's a lot of pressure. Being a professional athlete is a huge pressure. Trying to get a scholarship, huge pressure. And then, of course, with my working in law enforcement and during COVID, you really realize how mental health has affected people, how isolation has affected people. So mental health for me is so important for us to talk about, not shame people who say they have mental health issues, just a dialogue. That's why it really matters to me.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. When you were talking, you brought up so many things, and I think it made me think about, from low socioeconomic situations, poverty, childhood trauma, injury, all the way through, youth development programs where there's such intense pressure to succeed and thrive. And that's the thing that we're seeing with mental health and mental illness, is that it really runs the gamut, right? It's a full spectrum of illnesses, and depth and severity may vary by people. And so outcomes are different, right? So there's so much that is layered in this. And so trying to perform and be an athlete can be a real challenge.
Suzanne, can I chime in quick? I'm sorry.
Yes, please. Of course.
You didn't say whether we were able to, you didn't lay out the ground rules, so I'm sorry. But, when Daniel was talking, the first thing I would say is, boy, that's a radical young man. And then when Alex was talking, I was reminded that, we all know the trauma and the adverse experiences that veterans and military folks undergo. We are recognizing the similarity with law enforcement and people that are in first responders, fire. But I think with this experience, we're learning that it's the same trauma and challenge and adverse experiences that athletes who are disciplined and spend a lifetime trying to be their best and perform in the public for everybody and not let anybody down. It's probably very, very similar.
Yeah, it's very similar. Well, and athletes, as we know at Athletes for Hope, they're just like you and I, although many of them are perceived to be superhuman, right? They focus so much on their physical bodies and becoming.
And us little people are so jealous anyway.
Us typical non-athlete people. So yeah, I mean, they're expected to perform, especially the Alex and Daniel were performing in. So it makes me think about all of the other younger kids or people that are up and coming in college who want to be at that level, pushing themselves. So there's a lot to it. This is really a layered conversation. And I feel like we need 10 hours just to talk about it.
Well, you got the Napoleonic complex, and then you wonder if there's the opposite effect, not the gigantic, but the champion, the greatness. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure.
But
so go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I also think, I'm probably older than Daniel, but
not older than me.
Not older than me.
Growing up, it was very apparent to me that, I played sports. I played lots of sports.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, I feel like kids are they're like 5 years old and they're like, oh, I play soccer and that's all I do. And that pressure starts building. So kids today aren't the same as when I was a kid. Parents are really focused on, you're going to play soccer and that's all you're going to do. Mm-hmm. So I think the mental health issues have shown up, as you can see in the Olympics, how many have kind of said, I can't do this anymore, or in tennis, tennis players saying all the pressures that they feel. So I think mental health has been up here now, where back in the day, 20, 30 years ago, it wasn't really talked about a lot. I mean, you had Andre Agassi, with his biography talking about it, but it wasn't, no one talked about it. It was only later in life did they talk about the mental pressures that they had.
Yeah.
And Suzanne, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
The mental illness is when we go against the grain. And what we really know is that mental illness is the social determinants of health, and the social determinants of health are nothing more than when you're brown, black, or poor, the odds are stacked against you. Yeah. And that's when you start to feel different, whether you look different or you act different or you think different. And that's when people start to treat you differently. And that's when life gets compounded and challenging.
Yeah. You bring up such a great point, Jim. And I know we're going to do a series of these conversations focusing on just that, all the varied issues and challenges, especially for Black, Brown, Indigenous communities. You mentioned law enforcement. I mean, there's so many layers to this that we can continue to have this great conversation in Arizona. I'm wondering for all of you, because you're obviously here on a call with us today, having this conversation. What is finding that mental balance, or that, mental wellness, if you want to call it that balance, look like for you? How do you manage that? And I'm going to start with Daniel, and then I'm going to go to Alex and Jim.
Sweet. I think that at times the idea of balance can be a loaded word, and I know people who are parents or, athletes, and the sense of balance and this idea that everything is perfect. I'm not certain that quite exists, but what I do think exists is this idea of a word that I've been studying recently, just homeostasis, or really the idea of just being at a relaxed state to where you can respond to the external world in a healthy way. And a lot of times I'll take a physical example. If I'm running outside in Arizona, super hot, I'm going to be sweating. I'm going to, my heart rate is going to pick up. I'm going to start breathing a lot heavier. And that's my body's attempt to return to a state of homeostasis. And once I've gotten to that, I'll sweat in order to cool my body off, among other things. And I'm getting more oxygen in to oxygenate my blood and make sure that I'm able to optimize my current situation of being in the heat running around. I think when it comes to mental health, the idea of being in a state of relaxed intensity is the term that I would coin. I think about that all the time. If I can be in a state of relaxed intensity, it's not a anxious presence, but it's also not a complete whatever happens. It's I think a balance, or I like to say a tension between these two, what seem to be diametrically opposed ideas. There's a guy named Brett Burchard. He was a coach with the Phoenix Suns, and now he runs an organization called, his book is called Catching Confetti. And it's something that I would just recommend, just really for coaches and also for players. And there's a lot of techniques in there around mindset shifts and paradigm perspective, shifts as well, that have been really helpful for me. So that's kind of what I would say to that is, if we can get to a state of relaxed focus where we're online, we're aware of how we're feeling, of the thoughts that we're having, we're almost able to take a step back and not react to our emotional response or the thoughts that are popping into our head, but kind of evaluate and then respond. I think that that's a lot different from...
Was he looking at me when you said that?
Not one bit, Jim. Not one bit. I was looking at you and everyone else.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I think that's a really great, so I like the idea of relaxed intensity. And I think if people have that ability to do that or can get to that place, I know for some people that takes medication or resources or, services. It takes a long time for some people that are chronically mentally ill to get to that place. But
when you said that, the first thing that came to mind, relaxed intensity, it's because you're expecting good things.
Yeah.
I like that, Jim.
Positive mindset.
Yeah.
I like it.
That's good.
Yep. So what do you think, Jim? How do you find mental wellness or balance? What does that look like?
You should ask. I was just in a meeting with the city of Goodyear 2 weeks ago because they were trying to put together a RFP. They want to do some responsive stuff for their citizenry to make sure they respond to the needs of their mental and behavioral health. And they asked, how do you measure your success? I just kind of threw out off the cuff, which I'm known to do, that I have a very special relationship with my creator. And every morning, if I wake up and I'm breathing, then I know I'm on point. And the guy looked at me, he says, "Are you kidding me?" And I says, "No." And then somebody else after they could borrow it. So that works for me.
I like it. Yeah. So having that connection to a creator or faith or whatever your roots you, I would say, to that homeostasis or that balance. I like it. I like the idea of checking in every day too. I think that's a good idea. What about you, Alex? What does mental wellness or balance look like for you?
It's just spending time, just me and no one else. So I run a lot. I like running. So at the time that I'm running, it's a time for me to almost re-energize. Like you said, talk to your creator. I believe I have faith, and so talking to God, just listening to my breathing, disconnecting. My brain's always working nonstop. So running helps me disconnect from that nonstop thinking. It's a time also that I run with my dog. His name's Parsival.
And Alex, I call that walking in prayer, by the way.
Yeah, and with my dog, and so I bond with my dog, and just be in the now, because running helps me be in the now.
Yeah, I love that. You say Parsival? Parsival?
Yeah.
Cute. Yeah, I think, well, dogs are universally good for everybody. I think maybe cats too, but I love that idea. Again, just like spending that time in your own head, and exercise, as we know, is such a great tool to keep us all balanced. I don't know about running in Arizona. I'm worried about you all exercising in the heat there, but we'll come back to that. That's
Did you just call me a tool?
I did not call you a tool.
Thank you.
No,
My
sir.
hearing's not quite as good.
It's a tool in your toolbox for good health and wellness. Yeah, for sure. And I'm recommending you all go out and adopt a dog. So
I got 2.
Okay, great.
I used to have 3.
We should do a whole pet series then on mental health and wellness with pets, or small children for Daniel. They're so calming.
Yeah, right.
They are. They can be the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, right?
That's true. The peaks and valleys.
They sure are. Well, so let's talk about for people that are going to watch this in Arizona or beyond, not beyond, like, okay, Arizona. What do you want people who are struggling to know in general about mental health or in any of this? What would you say to people that are struggling and not sure where to go with their mental health?
Who's first?
Oh, good question. I'll start with Alex. Someone struggling in Arizona, what would you want them to know?
Well, I always say, and I say this to my daughters, it's to talk to someone. Find someone you trust and talk. I think that's another thing. And when I say talk, not text, not Snapchat. We need those connections. So I always, people laugh. My partner always laughs. When we go out in the community, we go to the same Starbucks. And my partner and I always ask people, hey, how are you doing? How's everything? We are opening the door for someone to say, I know I'm not doing too well today. And that's what we do. That's our law enforcement. Every morning, Brian and I go and figure out, okay, let's check in on the people we see every day. Because a lot of times we ignore those people and like, oh, they're fine. They're at work. They must be fine. But so when we go to Starbucks, and sometimes people will sit down and go, you know what, my mom's not doing too well. So I always tell my daughters, talk to people, ask them how they're doing, and really mean it, because people will share. So I think that's here in Arizona. I try a lot is to build relationships. Wherever I go, I try to always go to the same Starbucks because I want to build those relationships with people, and I want people to feel comfortable to share with me what they need. So that's basically it. It's just talk to people, build a relationship without texting, without the phone. That the relationship one-on-one with somebody.
Yeah,
that's great, Alex.
Go ahead. Yeah,
I was just going to celebrate Alex's answer. I would co-sign on that. And maybe another thing that I might add would be, if I was speaking to a younger me, or just, younger athletes in particular, I would say that although there are the kinds of pain and discomfort that we feel, especially mentally and emotionally, that we really do need to, as Alex said, I think, speak with somebody who is, well versed in that world, whether it's a therapist or a counselor or a pastor, spiritual leader in that context, I think can be really helpful. But what I would say also is that the cues that our mind kind of gives us, I think that we a lot of times just cope with those things and don't take cues that there may be something that I need to deal with, and a lot of times I think that we feel anxiety because of the pressure and the overwhelming sensations. And a lot of times, as Alex said, there have been times when I've just shared that with somebody, and actually by virtue of just speaking about it and, I would say just kind of conveying what I'm feeling, there's actually a benefit to that just inherently, where you feel better. And a lot of times I think that because, you know, you're an athlete and externally things look really great, you may not feel like you have an opportunity to speak up about just in, you know, to name a couple things. You know, you feel anxiety, or, you know, it's hard to get out of bed, or you feel just overwhelmed about the day and you're without hope, and it's something you once loved to do, you no longer enjoy doing as much. It feels like a chore, and you don't know how much longer you can go through the motions. You know, if you're feeling something like that, I always say, you know, that's something that you should look into, you know, and that it's okay to take a break. You know, I took a break for a while, you know, just to reassess, why is it that I'm doing this? So those are just some ideas, you know, that I would maybe share with someone who may be going through this stuff. And, you know, finally, Brene Brown is another resource. You know, I love her work, and she talks a lot about courage, you know, and that courage is actually not stifling the emotion and pretending like, you know, you're not experiencing anything and just fighting through it. It's actually naming how you're feeling and bringing that to the surface. That's actually true courage. You know, and that, I think that, you know, the youth of today could use, or I would just encourage you to walk in courage by being vulnerable and transparent about how you're feeling.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Walk in courage. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Speaking of walking, I created a walking club for our senior center.
Nice.
So we have 2 senior centers in Scottsdale, and we do so Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 a.m. And it's been great because we've had in the past couple of weeks, we've had suicides of older people in their 80s.
Oh gosh.
And it just shocked me. So we do a walking club, and these ladies come and they talk, and a lot of them are widowed and are lonely because their kids live far away. And that was something we decided would be a great opportunity, is to give them something to look forward to. And then they can talk to us, and they can exercise. So you're so right, walking with courage, because now it takes courage for me to hear someone say, I'm not doing well, and courage for them to say, oh, I miss my family, or, this is the best thing that's happening to me is just walking. And so, it's super important.
Yeah. Just want to celebrate, Alex, you for taking initiative and creating an environment where people can look forward to, you know, life without hope is awful, and a sense of community and well-being where we can trust one another, I think is part of at least what it means to be human. So that's awesome that you guys are doing that.
Thanks.
Love it. Jim, what do you think?
Scottsdale Police Department is doing lots of amazing, wonderful work up there. They are actually one of the original founders of CIT, even though Memphis gets the credit for it. Really? Scottsdale does their own thing.
Wow.
Good job, Alex.
Nice.
So is it my turn?
Yeah, go for it, Jim.
Which question?
What do you want somebody to know? Yeah, people who are struggling, what would you say?
I'll try to behave. You know, and I actually learned new behavior. Instead of jumping in my impulse and interrupting, I took notes. I can't read my handwriting though, but I got just enough of a doctorate in behavioral health to be dangerous. And the theory was brief therapeutic intervention over the lifespan, recognizing that everybody has life upsets. We have illness, we have death, we have disease, we have divorce, we have separation, we have job loss, we have people committing suicide. Shit happens. I'm sorry, excuse my language. I forgot that. But the idea, if we treat people like we expect them to get better, instead of, here, you're sick, take these pills, no stress, you'll never work again. My God, they get better, so it's a whole different approach. But unfortunately, we have a sickness-based industry, and that happens anytime you privatize. There's a happy median somewhere, but when you privatize, you create lots of opportunities for people to get their share, in the middle and on the bottom and on the top. And, and there's a more effective way, and there's a fairer, more equitable way to do it as well. The other thing I wanted to share to the young people, because I sure don't want to scare them off with that political message, is that I learned this in my master's program that Dr. Lori Ashcraft and Dr. Beth Stoneking did. One was with the University of Arizona. The other was with ASU. And it was my psychiatric rehab practitioner credential. And I remember the acronym BPSSC. B stands for, we don't have a blood test or a diagnostic tool to know if you have mental illness. but we know that it has biological, psychological, sociological, spiritual, and cultural implications. And so when I had my epiphany on my road to Damascus almost 25 years ago, I was able to eventually look at what happened, and part of what set me back is my thyroid stopped working when I was 9 years old, and we didn't figure it out till I was almost 16. And we knew that it affected my physical health because I was only 4'8" going into high school. But we didn't recognize that it affected my psychological, sociological, spiritual, and cultural and everything else until I went into the Air Force at 18. And here I am, a young man trying to grow up right in the middle of puberty. I was probably 18, but really about 12. So, sometimes it takes a while for life to catch up. Yeah. But it does, and it gets beautiful every day.
That's a lovely answer. I really appreciate the depth you brought into that as far as that's such a wide-ranging thing. And we never talk about the biological piece, the spiritual piece. So thank you for that. I'm going to take notes on the BP.
And they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Are you calling me an old dog? Is that what we're hearing?
No, I'm not by myself. Once again, self-deprecating humor. It's a defense.
Wait, but you said BPSST. What's the T again?
C is culture.
C. Okay, I did hear you wrong.
Oh, wait, now you got me confused, Suzanne. Biological, psychological, sociological, spiritual, and cultural.
Culture. It is a C. Okay, I thought I heard you wrong, so thank you for that clarification.
I don't speak clearly anymore. I can't hear well. I can't speak well, but
no, that was great. I just want to make sure I had it because I want to do my research after this and look that up. So thank you for that.
I got a book I can share.
Okay. So
I probably shouldn't show it on film though, because then I'm doing a shameless plug, and they should pay me for that.
All right. Well, maybe at the end of the session we'll have some time you can show us.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah. So I know we've been chatting for a little bit now, and I just want to focus real quick on Arizona. Is there anything specific to Arizona that you use as a resource or know of as a resource that you would recommend to others? And I'm going to start with Daniel and then go Alex, then let Jim finish last.
Yeah, awesome. Just quickly, I already referenced one of them. Just as far as mindset goes, his name is Brett Burchard, incredible guy. And his book is called Catching Confetti. It's short and it's several kind of mindsets of champions. And it's been just really applicable and really helpful. And it's where I got the relaxed intensity idea. And then another one is it's separate from, it's called Christchurch Central Phoenix. And it's a separate kind of spinoff. It's called the City Hope Center. And what they seek to do is provide food, hygiene, and really just connections to additional resources. So for those who are experiencing homelessness, to those who are experiencing, mental health issues, they can go there, and they're not the one-stop shop, take care of everything. They'll help facilitate, a situation where you can get to the help that you need. And so that's also an environment you can volunteer at on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So it's called the City Hope Center, and that's right smack in the middle of Central Phoenix.
Love it. These are great resources. Thank you. All right, Alex, what do you think? I know you already mentioned a few as well, and you yourself, I think, are a resource. So
yeah, just come stop by Via Linda District, and I will, find something for kids to do or for adults to do. If you want to talk, I can always go to Starbucks. But yes, I do believe we have we have PCIS here, which is our crisis intervention specialists. So whenever we're out and about and we do meet homeless people or unsheltered, we do give them opportunities. We do have a list of places where they can go to find what they need. And also, I always tell people, treat everyone with dignity. That's the last thing a person has when they're experiencing mental illness. And here in Arizona, especially in Scottsdale, all our officers will try and do exactly that. Give person a dignity and a chance to get out of where they are at the moment.
Love that.
Give Tracy my love.
Nice. Jim, what about you? Anything? I know you have a ton of resources.
I'll try to be succinct, and you guys tell me how much time I have because I got a laundry list once again. In spite of Arizona often being the butt of late night jokes, we've really pioneered a number of innovative life-saving interventions. We've been leading the nation in individual and family peer support since 2000, probably. Arizona actually credentials certified peer support specialists and then empowers agencies all around the state to train and employ them. But it's become a national SAMHSA evidence-based best practice. And what we've learned is that, it's not so much the illness or the disease or the drug or the problem, but it's the relationship. Relationships are hard, and every relationship is going to have conflict. So we just decide we ain't going to quit each other, And so part of what we do is we force ourselves to meet whether we want to or not, and we have a OIFA advisory council. That's the Arizona Access Office, our Medicaid office, that they have a Office of Individual and Family Affairs. And they have an advisory council that's anywhere from 60 to 200 people that'll get on this conference call. And it's subject matter experts who have been working together 20, 25, 30 years or more. And they all are the kind of folks that don't care who gets the credit, right? And it's just amazing what happens when nobody cares who gets the credit. And that's how we've done so many powerful innovations. And that's open, actually. And they put out a weekly newsletter on Friday that you can subscribe to and go to the Access website. But if you get their newsletter, and Chaz puts that together, and it has everything you ever wanted to know about opportunities for individual and family involvement, whether it's with the regional behavioral health authorities, the health plans, the state. Everybody is recognizing, people with lived experience are the ones that you have to involve. Nothing about us without us. And, and if we're going to expect individuals can recover, we got to expect that families and companies and governments and everybody else can recover as well. And we're starting to see that. And it's kind of encouraging. The other piece is that there's an Arizona Peer and Family Coalition that is a group of peers and providers and folks that are committed to growing individual and family leadership all around the state. And they've developed a civic leadership development training that they use to prepare people to sit at the table in the communities where they live and to have a voice, in what we call sequential intercept mapping. What has to do with CMS, the Stepping Up Initiative, and recognizing that if you are Black, brown, or poor, and you do something wrong, chances are you're going to go to jail. But if you are white and wealthy, you'll go to outpatient treatment. And we saw that forever when I ran an outpatient treatment. And then lo and behold, the American Psychological Association admitted it, that their diagnostic criteria was based on racist, segregationist, stereotypical, and discriminatory criteria. And they're committed to doing something about it. So the time is right. And if we get the right people at the right tables, amazing things can happen. Quickly, Arizona has pioneered crisis forever. Nick Margiotti, former City of Phoenix police sergeant, was kind of the person that went around to the regional behavioral health value options when we had that 30-year class action lawsuit. And he would go and raise hell with all the providers and say that, our cops would love to drop somebody off at a crisis center, but they can't stand around and wait for 15, 20 minutes, So he would meet with all the providers and give them a report on how long it took them to respond to a crisis call and relieve the mobile team, or how long it took an officer to drop somebody off at the psych resource center as opposed to locking them up in jail. And lo and behold, it made a huge difference. In our crisis phones, actually, Solari has just won a contract to be the crisis phone provider in all 3 regions in Arizona. They also have contracts in multiple other states. But they have an advantage because Maricopa County, with that class action lawsuit for 30 years, has had a number of services and resources, at least in the public behavioral system, that aren't available in the rural outlying areas. Our commitment has been to work with those rural outlying areas to make sure they have basic common infrastructure, because you can't do 988 or 911 if you don't have a dial tone or a voice signal or a Wi-Fi or a laptop or something. So that's why we reached out to the 22 tribal nations with Arizona, and because the places that we have so hard communicating with and navigating are diverse and disparate geographical challenging regions. But if we can build those relationships, hopefully they'll welcome us onto the reservation and partner with us in our communities, and we can open the doors, and the world is a beautiful place. That's the vision.
I love that. I think that's a wonderful vision, and certainly what we would hope to partner on and support is reaching out to those rural areas. Like you said, there's just so many parts of Arizona that may not have access, and accessibility is a big issue. So appreciate you bringing that up, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I
Thank
think
you for the avenue.
of course, no, I mean, again, we can create hyperlinks and put resources out for folks. We will continue to make and share any resources that y'all have come up with that we can share or that we find along these Arizona conversations.
Well, and as you know, I'm full of it, Suzanne.
You have a lot of it, so we can get all that from you and have wonderful conversations, I think, about a lot of different avenues here. So I've heard from a lot of you about relationship building and connections. And so I guess I just want to invite any of you, if you have last minute thoughts, and then I'll give a closing thought before we leave here today. And I'll start with Alex, and then I'll go Jim and Daniel, if you have any last minute thoughts before we close.
Yeah, just remembering that life is hard and it's up and down. We all go through it. Even in my best, when I was professional soccer and what people consider the top of life, there are days that you don't want to wake up, you don't want to do anything. Just remember those days can go away, and to connect with people, not just devices, just connect, talk to people. I think we're missing a lot of that.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. Jim, then Daniel.
Well, speaking of connecting with people, I don't carry business cards anymore, but I am more than happy for people to look me up on LinkedIn and connect. And I don't really want followers. I want people to connect and let's do a relationship. And so just look me up, and I hardly turn anybody away because it's better than a Rolodex. It's just amazing how LinkedIn works these days. And I thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jim.
Yeah, I would just, thank you guys for sharing this time. And, as well, I want to make myself available, whether it's through something like social media, can sometimes be a helpful touch point, but it's by no means the substance that, a relationship should be built on. I would agree with what Alex said there again. And so I'm on, LinkedIn, as Jim said, Daniel Alexander, and then on Instagram and Twitter and things like that. Would love to connect and just hear, stories of young athletes. And if I can point you in the right direction or be a listening ear, I'd like to make myself available in that capacity as well.
That's so tremendous. You all have been so generous with your time, and now to extend that to others, I think is really powerful. So thank you. And I think
thank you, Suzanne. You're pretty awesome yourself, by the way.
So sweet. This is like the love of I love that we're able to have these conversations, and this is my job technically, but what I've been doing for so long. And so to tie it all with your work has been really powerful for me as well. And I love, I heard you all say connections and courage, right? From the lovely Brene Brown, what Daniel was talking about, compassion and collaboration. And I think there's so many things here that we can do better and that we all individually can do. But I think collectively as a group, we've got a lot of work to do. But I think the more we have conversations and continue in this space, we can be a powerful tool for change. So
Si se puede.
What's that?
Si se puede.
Si se puede. Exactly. I think be thankful for the Arizona Community Foundation and for NAMI Arizona and for any of you and definitely for Alex and Daniel for taking the time today. You did not have to come on here to do this with us, but you gently volunteered to come do this with us and politely have given us such great information, but also just bravely shared stuff about yourself and your efforts in the mental health space. And I really appreciate that. It takes a lot of courage.
And I'd like to thank the athletes as well, because you've helped me overcome some of the stigma I have towards athletes. Great job.
Well, there you go.
I'm sure some of it's accurate, Jim.
Well, and vice versa, no doubt.
Yes. Well, I think, again, having those personal connections and conversations are what's going to help us all in this space that we're all in. So just taking the time to have a conversation is really powerful. So I thank you for your time. I appreciate you. And I
was
can't
worried
wait
about Daniel.
I know Daniel disappeared there for a second, but no, I really appreciate your time. So thank you so much and have a great day.